Hi, all, and welcome to Attack Surface Management Defined, Understanding Security from the Attacker's Perspective. Today's awesome webinar is sponsored by Censys.io and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach with Actual Tech Media, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be your moderator for this discussion. You know, one of the things that I like most about my job is that I'm constantly getting to learn about new technologies and innovations, which is awesome and exciting. And it is absolutely one of the best parts of being in the world of technology. But as IT environments become more layered, agile, complex, bigger, more streamlined, whatever your organization needs, they're also getting harder and harder to secure. When we think about security these days, it can feel like we're trying to lock a gate that no longer closes, guard a perimeter that is no longer straight or really even a solid line, watch a wall that's full of windows, and protect it from and for a workforce that can walk in the front door from just about anywhere in the world. So if anyone is feeling a little bit like they're playing a game of 52 card pickup in the middle of a windstorm, you are not alone. But it's not all doom and gloom, my friends, because returning to that original point, there are new tools developing all the time, and innovations like Attack Surface Management, or ASM, help us to identify exposed assets across the cloud and internet. But as we'll hear today, having that data is just step one. Knowing how to prioritize which risks to focus on and then how to address them, that's how you get out of the windstorm. And that's the great news, because today we're going to learn about a solution from Censys that will help us do exactly that. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I am pretty amped up to learn more, so I'm going to just zip through a few important points to get us on our way today. All right, so first, I want to draw your attention to the questions section of your webinar console. Now, the absolute best part of a webinar like this is the chance to ask questions directly of an expert like we have with us here today. So make sure to get all your ASM and security questions in that questions tab. And if we are unable to get to your question actually in the live Q&A, don't worry. The Censys team will be following up with you after the webinar. A quick reminder that that question console is also a great place to say hi to all the other awesome folks in the audience today. You can also use that tab to connect with the Actual Tech Media team. So if you do have any technical issues during the session, knock on wood, of course, don't forget that a browser refresh should get rid of any of the usual tech gremlins. Okay, now I want to skip along to that handout section. It's right next to the questions tab in your console. You're going to see some exciting content to go along with the webinar today, so be sure to explore and download those for later. And hey, it's not just awesome content that we're giving away today. We also have a $300 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Of course, you must be in live attendance during the webinar to qualify for the prize, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, click into that handouts tab, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's there. Now, I know that this crew is not going to need any additional nudging to ask a question, but we're big fans of curiosity here. So today, we're also going to be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to the best question asked during the webinar. Now, keep in mind, again, the team is reviewing all the questions asked after the webinar. So even if your question does not get read out during the live session, there's still a chance to win. And as always, we'll reach out to you after things have wrapped. Okay, now I know that you guys are just as impatient to get rolling as I am. So let's dive in. I am so excited to introduce Kaz Green, Product Marketing Manager at Censys. Let's bring Kaz in here with us today. Hi, Kaz.
Hey, Jess, how you doing?
Doing great. Having a great start to the morning and ready to jump into all this awesome content you've got ready for us.
Right on. Let's get into it. First of all, hello, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us today. I know it's a busy schedule in the security world, so this means a lot. But let's just get into it. My name is Kaz. I'm a product marketing manager here at Censys. I've been with the company for around 2 years, and previously I was on the sales team on the solutions engineering side. So, I've been on the front lines. I know what the customers are talking about and what they're super interested in. So I think we have a really good demo for you today. I'm going to run through a couple slides. I will not slide you to death. I promise I don't like it either. But I do just want to level set, who is Censys? What are we about? What do we do? And then talk about what are some of the challenges of the modern security world. Jess was touching on a bunch of those in the intro, and we'll dig into that. And ultimately, why is ASM a relevant topic? Why are we talking about it today? Why is your CISO maybe bugging you to come to this webinar? That's all fine and good, but we'll get into the good stuff. We'll get into a very good demo. And then we can finish up with, how do you want to get engaged with Censys? How can you start? So first up, who are we? We're Censys. We are the industry leaders in internet scan data. We own a global scanning infrastructure that allows us to scan the entire IPv4 space more frequently and more comprehensively than anybody, and have been doing this since 2017. We're scanning on over 3,500 ports using what we call automatic protocol detection. And this allows us to provide 63% more service coverage than our nearest competitor. Simply put, we know the internet and the cloud better than anyone else. But what do we do? What do we do with all that data? Well, we provide an attacker-centric view of all external-facing cloud and internet assets, and we can help you, the customer, fix the problems that are actually going to get you breached. So because of all this rich scan data, we can show an organization everything they know, that is everything they own that is on the internet and in the cloud. We will continuously update your attack surface to provide fresh data and keep up with the rapid changes in your environment and help you prioritize any risks from an attacker's perspective. So where are those easy targets? What are the things that could lead to incidents and breaches? And how does an attacker see my organization? So that's what we do, right? When we're talking about attack surface management, but why is this even a problem? Why is this a problem we're solving? Well, I think this slide, everyone can probably relate to a couple of these bullet points, if not all of them. And again, Jess touched on them in our intro, but first and foremost, environments are so much more complex now than they were 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, with the expansion of cloud, IoT, M&A activity, your employee base working from anywhere in the world. It's just gotten super, super out of hand, right? And at Censys, we've seen customer attack surface growing at a rate of like 1.5 to 2x year over year. So just take a second to think about that. Where you are today, a year from now, you could potentially have 2 times more things that you need to keep track of, right? And that's assuming that you know everything and everyone's, following protocols and doing everything that they should. But that's obviously not the case. So complex environments, and that just leads into the next point, which is tools today, and they are very great. I'm not here to poo-poo on any tools, but a lot like vulnerability management tools, CSPMs, CASBs, if you were to summarize a theme across all of them, is they're focused on managing what we know about and what is bad about those things. And that's obviously a great place to start. These are necessities. These are tools that we need. But what about the unknown, right? We talked about the expanding environments and how anyone can really expand the attack surface perimeter. What we've seen with our customers is around 43% of all of their assets are potentially unknown, right? So we think about it's growing, the attack surface is growing rapidly, and almost half of your attack surface is unknown. You can start to think of how susceptible you are to breaches, to incidents, to vulnerabilities that you may just not know exist, right? And then we get to resources, very limited resources in that fact. No one has enough time. I think no one has the headcount they would like. No one has enough tools, but we all have to make it work, right? But this is a problem and it's not going away. So we need tools that can help us get ahead of the 8 ball, get ahead of the attackers, get ahead of these 0 days, and make sure we're playing offensive security and not just being reactive, right? So again, system administrators and developers, they contribute a lot to this growing attack surface. And we've seen teams on average are outnumbered 50-1 developers to security staff. This is just all feeding into the complex environments, the not knowing what you have. It's all just getting very, very hard to keep track of. And that leads to a lack of prioritization, or being able to clearly state, hey, these are the things that are important to me and my team. These are the aspects that are critical to my business. So I need to protect them first, right? We have a lot of alerts, a lot of tools, but some of them are not addressing the issues. We've seen 65% of high and critical risks live in the cloud. So if our developers, who are outnumbering us, are spinning things up in the cloud, and that's where the risks are, we need a tool that can help us keep our eyes across all cloud environments and make sure that we're not exposed to anything that could lead to a major issue in the back end. And I think all these points kind of come together with the fact that old attacks are still effective, right? 0 days are something that need to be dealt with. They do cause a lot of headaches. But in reality, the majority of security issues come from vulnerabilities that have persisted over time. Whether you did not know about them, whether you couldn't find them, whether you did not have the time to get to them, it doesn't really matter. The people on the outside, the attackers, don't necessarily care what those problems are. And what we saw, what our research team has found is 3 months after the Microsoft Exchange CVE or 0-day was announced, there were still 250,000 servers that were vulnerable, right? So think about that. That's a ton of infrastructure out there on the internet that is vulnerable to a headline CVE or 0-day. And simply those exist because people didn't know about them, did not have time to get them, or could not properly prioritize. So once we have all this in mind, now we can see attack surface management, a tool that is helping us find everything we own on the internet. That's a great spot to be. So with that, let me jump into the demo. We're in the Censys attack surface management platform. This is one of our sandbox environments called Papertown, but this is the exact portal that a Censys customer would log into. The first thing I want to talk about is how we define the attack surface. What do we mean when we say we'll help you find everything you own that's on the internet? So a Censys customer can expect to see all of their externally exposed IPs, domains, subdomains, storage buckets in the cloud, certificates, any software we're able to detect, and then all open ports and services running on those ports. So those 8 categories, those 8 data types are how Censys thinks about the attack surface. All this information will also be updated on a daily basis, right? So not only are we doing asset discovery every single day, so trying to find new workloads in the cloud or trying to track down domains that have recently been registered, but also looking at everything we already know about, everything that's in your attack surface today, and assessing that for risk. Are these ports that I see on this particular host, are they running services that are risky? This software that we were able to see yesterday, has it reached its end of life? Being able to have the freshest data, the most accurate view of what your attack surface looks like right now is super important once we start to think about, resource constraints, lack of prioritization. I just don't have time. The last thing you want to be doing is second guessing a tool like this, a tool that should be your source of truth for all that is on the internet and relevant to your company, and spending time wondering, hey, is this asset even mine? Is this IP mine still, or has it changed hands multiple times because it's in the cloud? We are the only ASM vendor that is able to give you updates on a daily basis. And again, it's super important to make sure that you are working with fresh data, not stale data. You don't want to be spending time remediating issues or chasing down false positives. That's not going to help anybody. So on the dashboard, we'll show some good high-level information like the top 5 risks based on their severity, hosts and their geolocation data, so where are these things popping up in the world. And then at the top, you can also get a sense of the different environments that we're able to observe within your attack surface. So let's say for this demo, I'm particularly concerned about the cloud. I want to focus in there. I think we're doing okay, but I just want to be sure. Clicking on this tab will cause the rest of the dashboard to filter. And now I'm looking at, okay, the majority of our infrastructure does look like it lives in AWS. That's what I expect. However, there's still some GCP that I see. There's still some Azure. And even more concerning, there's also this other cloud provider section. So if we click on this, I think this is a scenario that a lot of us have probably found ourselves in where, again, I would like to believe all the work we do in the cloud is confined within, a handful of AWS accounts, maybe that one specific Azure tenant for that one specific customer, but everything is in there and I know about it. In reality, that is not even close to true. That's not how business runs today, unfortunately. And every customer we work with, everybody we talk to, this is exactly how their cloud footprint looks, where the digital oceans and the Tencents of the world, that is part of your infrastructure. that is part of your attack surface, because this is the marketing team spinning up a website to drive traffic to an event. This is maybe a developer who's up against a deadline. They need a test environment to be spun up really quickly. They do it in 10 cent. They make their changes. They close out their work. They go on their day and they forget to spin down the environment. Whatever it is, the natural ebbs and flows of how businesses operate today lend itself very well to shadow cloud, shadow IT starting to creep in, starting to expand that attack surface. And that's also just compounded by the fact that the barrier to entry in cloud is so low that now really anyone in the organization can contribute to this. Anyone can start to expand the boundaries, make this list longer of what ultimately we as a security team is responsible for. And so I talked about in our presentation that Censys is scanning, at a daily cadence. We actually double down on that in the cloud. So we're scanning all cloud infrastructure 2 times a day. And that's one, because things are so dynamic. Things are changing, things are being spun up and brought down so rapidly that it's necessary. It's also necessary when you think of the ephemerality in the cloud space. I talked about IPs, those rotate over and over and over again. The last thing you want is to be looking at something that you never owned. You're actually looking at the risks of the previous owner or maybe the owner before that. So we are scanning 2 times in the cloud, and it's strictly just to keep up with the pace. So all these cards, you can click on them, you can start to investigate that way. But if I were to want to see everything I owned in one consolidated view, one single pane of glass, if you will, I can actually use our search bar for that. So I'm going to type in a query to find all of my hosts and storage buckets. We could have added certificates and domains to this as well, but now I can see every single asset across all different asset types within one place, and now I can begin to make sense of all this data. On this page, I also wanted to point out this particular column, source. So during the presentation, I talked about how we do a lot of work to help organizations uncover things that they may not have known about in the past. The exact number was 43% of all assets in our customer environments do not come directly from a piece of data that they told us about or a particular cloud account that they may have configured and hooked up to the platform. This source column is where you're getting that information. So yes, we do have cloud connectors into AWS, GCP, and Azure. We're the only ASM provider that has those available as native integrations, and those are great for getting the inside out visibility of these are my known accounts and here's everything that's within them, paired with the outside in visibility that Censys is providing. So now we can make ourselves a little bit stronger, make the attribution and the asset discovery a little bit more accurate and more intelligent. And that will let us compare and contrast. This is what we knew about, this is what we told Censys about, and this is everything that Censys was still able to find. And that can potentially be unknown. That's where we start to uncover the unknown portion of this. And that will be captured with the Censys scan label in the source column, right? So if we were to look at this host in particular, I want to understand how we found it, what's going on, why does Censys thinks this belongs to me? So I'll end up on what we call our host details page. And this is where we will enrich this particular IP, domain, subdomain, certificate, whatever it is. We will enrich with all the other data that Censys is capturing while we scan. We'll also lay out exactly why we think this particular asset belongs to you or belongs within your attack surface. And that's captured in our trail. So each trail will read the same from the bottom up. And what we can see here is This actually did come from a known account in AWS, so it came in through a cloud connector. It's a piece of Route 53 information. It's a domain name that we saw. That was the input data. That was the seed data. That was the starting point. And from there, we pivoted to this IP because we found an A record connecting the two. But however, if we scroll down a little bit, we'll actually see that this IP lives in DigitalOcean. So not only is this outside of that known AWS account, it's not in AWS at all. And this is a great example of why the data that fuels an ASM platform needs to have comprehensive visibility across the whole internet. It can't just be focused on one particular area, and also needs to be scanning frequently enough to catch things like this. If you're working on stale data, if you're working on a monthly refresh, you may miss these things start to pop up, and that's where problems can begin to arise. Another thing on this host that I think is pretty interesting is I talked about automatic protocol detection, and that being one of our scanning methodologies. What does that actually mean? What does that actually look like? Well, here's a great example. So HTTPS, typically on port 443. In this case, we detected it on port 9273. So the way that we scan is we will not say we're on port 22. We will not say, hey, let's determine if SSH is or is not running. We will determine the service regardless of the port number. And so what that has led us to find is around 60% of all of the services that we observe globally, so on a global basis, around 60% of those are on non-standard port and protocol pairings. So think about that. That's a huge number. That's obviously the majority of the internet, but a huge swath of data that you could potentially just be missing if your asset discovery tools are not using this type of scanning methodology. So that is the host details page where you can understand what is going on this host, how do we find it. But let's say, I've read through all this information. Now I have a sense of, I think this might be marketing. Also, I see that it's in the Netherlands, so I know it's part of the EMEA team. And I want to add some internal context. I want to add some notes. So the next person who looks at this, maybe I have a junior analyst starting soon. Maybe there's folks from a different team that log into this platform as well. I want them to be up to speed immediately. So I'm going to add some tags. So on this particular one, I'm going to add, again, I think this belongs to marketing, and I know that ultimately the EMEA team will be responsible for this. So I will go ahead and add those tags. Tagging is a really great way to, like I said, add some additional information, but also begin to break your attack surface up on a much larger scale, right? So if we start to think about business units, regions, subsidiaries, those are all great search criteria, great filter criteria where you can find everything within your attack surface that pertains to a certain search query. So if I said, because we're in Paper Town, I want to find everything that has the word paper in it, I can do that. And now I can say, using bulk actions, let's just go ahead and tag all of these as, this is, again, business unit A, B, or C, or this belongs to so-and-so. Again, tagging is a really good way to start to break all that information up. Okay, so up until this point, it has mostly been about investigating your attack surface, understanding the data, seeing the nuances, the different areas, maybe things that are anomalous. But the other side of attack surface management is understanding my risk posture. What do I look like from the outside? Are there areas where I'm vulnerable? Where are those areas? And how and when should I take care of them? So if we go to our risk tab, this is where we are going to really start to dig into the work that you're probably going to want to do. The different risks that we see across the platform. This is where you're going to want to start. So our risk framework is designed to keep up with the shifting threat landscape. And what I mean by that is it's not going to focus just on software vulnerabilities and CVEs. We do cover that, but we're focusing on anything that an attacker would prioritize, anything that would be enticing to someone on the outside. So exposed services, misconfigured storage buckets, exposed Kubernetes dashboards. We will pepper in 0 days when they come out. But this is meant to, again, give you that attacker's perspective on my environment and show you where's the low-hanging fruit, where are the places that could actually lead to a breach, just based on someone from the outside seeing this and saying, yes, this is an easy target for me. That's the exact perspective that we're trying to provide here. So when you start to think about, how do I go through all this? Severity is a really easy way to obviously prioritize. Each risk will have its own severity based on the impact, exploitability, and likelihood of this risk. So that's a very good way to just start with the criticals, work your way down to the highs and lows. You can also say, I just want to focus on all of the risks that are new to me within the last month, week, or day. And then on the flip side, you could say, let me see all the risks that have been in my environment the longest, right? 0 days are something that needs to be dealt with. They do cause a lot of headache. But the majority of breaches happen from vulnerabilities that have persisted over time. Whether that's because you didn't know about it, you didn't have the resources to get to it, it wasn't prioritized effectively, whatever the reason is, long-standing vulnerabilities often are the way that folks find their way into your organization. And these are absolutely fixable problems. So we're looking at our risk page, and let's say I want to, again, focus on the cloud. So I'm going to look at all of my risks in the cloud space. And as I'm starting to look through this data, let me flip this to show the most recent ones. As I'm starting to look through all this data, I'm seeing, okay, this host has popped up a couple of times that I see. So we have end-of-life Apache, SSH exposed, end-of-life version of OpenSSL. But this host, to me, I know exactly what this is. And, for some reason, our business dictates that we do need to be running this particular version of OpenSSL, or we do need to have SSH exposed, or this version of Apache is critical to the data behind it, or the way that this piece of infrastructure runs. Whatever it is, I don't want my team to focus on it. I don't want them to spend any cycles trying to remediate this because it's understood. It should be like this. It's under my accepted level of risk. Either way, I want it out of sight, out of mind. So I can actually go ahead and accept this risk. And I'll give it a reason like, something generic like controls in place, right? But now I've reduced my list of to-dos, right? Gone from 72 to 69, not a huge jump, but we are starting to reduce that workload, right? And this is one of the things about prioritizing is it's not always what I need to do first, second, third. Sometimes it is, hey, what can I actually just cross off the list right now? How can I begin to focus even more intensely on the issues that are going to cause problems and filter out some of the noise that we're getting from, in this case, infrastructure that was designed to be the way that it is. The other thing that we're going to help you do is visualize different areas, right? So if we look at risk categories, sticking with kind of the cloud theme, I know that we're doing a lot of work in the cloud, and I know that every single day AWS puts out a new service that I've never heard of, and I don't really know how it works. So I want to make sure that nothing we have in the cloud is configured or misconfigured. So now we've pared it down even more. So we went from 72 now to 3 risks, much easier to digest, much more doable. And now I'm just kind of looking at these risks. And let's say this one in particular catches my eye. I don't know this host. I don't really know a ton about it. I'm not sure why there's any authentication going on at all. So I want to pop in here and see what's going on. So I jump into the risk view, and immediately I see this is actually the host that we looked at earlier, right? This is the potentially a marketing website. It's in DigitalOcean, part of the EMEA team. Um, but now I'm a little bit concerned, right? I did not know that there were any risks involved. I didn't realize that there was any, authentication that had to go on with this particular domain. So I want to get on this pretty quick because this is a bit concerning to me. So Censys thinks this is a medium risk, but to me, just based on what we just described, this is critical to me. I need this to be fixed right away. It's clearly not being managed, clearly not being patched or updated. So I need to make sure that that gets taken care of. And I'm just going to treat all the risks on this host the same. So I'm going to bump this SSH up to a critical as well, right? So now I've done prioritization in the other way, right? Before we talked about taking things off your to-do list and accepting risk. Now I'm reconfiguring, I'm bubbling things up to the top that are of concern to me and could potentially lead to a breach, right? So we've done all that. Now I want to think about, how do I actually action this? How do I actually get this to the person that it needs to go to? So Censys will always provide our kind of explanation on each risk, right? So if we're looking at SSH, we'll give you the reason that we flagged the risk, but also remediation recommendations. Because we know that more often than not, you may not be the one that's responsible for this website, that's responsible for this database, whatever it is. You may not actually be responsible, but you are the one that is responsible for it to get patched. So you want to be able to kind of control that remediation effort and say, hey, this is exactly what you need to do, right? So we'll always provide guidance on this is what you should do as a primary step, as a secondary step, and then also just in general, why is this a risk to you? So once you've done that, now we can start to think about, how do I actually get this thing closed down, right? Understanding, finding this risk is step one, but there are many steps that follow this. So this is where, integrations and other tools can start to come into the fold. Do we want to create a ticket? Is this a scenario where we want to leverage a Jira or a ServiceNow to, let's just start working on this immediately. Let's get this ticket created, put on our board, and that way someone can pick it up. So if you do that, all the tickets will be collected down here. And so you can start to track along, where is this at on my Jira board? Are we working on it actively, or is this still in the backlog? So that's one option. Another option is, hey, because this is new to me, because I'm a little bit, concerned about what's going on, I actually want to do a deeper scan. I also want this to be part of a regular scanning cadence. So I'm going to send this to my Vuln scanner. I'm going to send this to my Tenable, my Rapid7. I want to make sure this particular host is getting the same treatment, the same level of scrutiny or detail as everything else in my attack surface, particularly because this is new. So that's another option, is send it to your VM tool and dig a little bit deeper. There's also options of integrating with a SIM tool like a Splunk or a SOAR platform. Any number of ways to get this particular information off to the necessary people so the fix can be made, so the website can be taken down. Whatever is actually going on, you can make sure it gets fixed. And so lots of different ways to go at it. Either way, let's say it does go off, and then so-and-so reaches back to you, reaches back out to you and says, hey, I fixed that issue, or you see the ticket get closed down, and you want to make sure, you want to trust but verify on your end, so to close that remediation loop. What you can do on every asset in your platform is rescan on demand. This is also something that's unique to Censys. This is absolutely free of charge to you, but you can say, I want this weak authentication page to be addressed, and also because this is running on an interesting port, remember this is HTTPS, I would expect that port to just drop away, right? So when we rescan, that's exactly what we're doing. We're letting you trust but verify that the work is being done, and so you can see immediately, okay, this vulnerability is no longer visible from the outside. We are good to go. So as you're doing that, all the risks that you see, they will start to move as they start to close out. They'll start to move over to this closed section. So now you can start to track, okay, we saw this many risks, we closed out this many. They were alive or in our environment for X amount of days, whatever level of detail you need there. This is all good, but you also want to be able to tell your boss, hey, look how well we're doing. And so that's where the reporting tab will come in. So if we open this, these reports were designed to, be mostly charts and graphs and trends of how is the attack surface changing over time, letting your CISOs, letting your directors, letting your VPs know, letting your board members know even, how is our security posture from an attack surface perspective. So there are three different categories: attack surface risk, so everything regarding risk, the different levels of severity, risks involving self-signed certificates and things like that as well. The next section would be attack surface size. So is our attack surface growing or shrinking in a way that makes sense given what we're doing with our business? Are we seeing large spikes? If so, why? Is it going in the direction that we think it's going? And then the last section will be attack surface composition. So this is where you can think of things like baselining. So what registrars are we using? Is anything out of this registrar out of compliance? If so, this is a great way to see. Of our 3 domains, maybe 2 of them are not in the space that we need. Same thing goes for certificate issuers as well. Reporting will be where you capture all the hard work that you've done. You can have these created on any time frame that you'd like. And then you can see this is for all data. You can start to drill into, hey, let me just show you everything that the EMEA team is working on, right? Using those tags that we created earlier. Now you can have even more granular reports. Again, if we think about breaking it up by business unit, you can start to report on that as well. The last piece of the platform is our logbook, and this is simply historical events in your attack surface. So anything and everything that happens, hosts being discovered, risks being found, software reaching end of life, domains expiring, anything and everything is captured in this logbook. This is also where the majority of our integrations stem from. So you can choose any of these events to trigger different playbooks in your SOAR to send newly discovered hosts to your vuln scanners. The logbook is a very, very rich source of information. And even better, because it is historical, you can begin to look back in time. So if something does happen, you can understand, hey, this is when this service came online. This is when this particular host was added to our attack surface. And also just see how you've changed over time. Yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that demo. We really were trying to show off there is tools out there like Censys that can help you understand, one, what is everything that I'm even responsible for. Again, it's very hard to keep track of that on your own. A lot of our customers come to us and say, we have spreadsheets. We talk to our domain registrar periodically. We even use our compliance and our accounting to figure out how much we're paying and what we're paying for. Those are hard ways to do it. I think Censys ASM is a great tool that would help you get ahead of that, automate a lot of this. We see about 45 hours being saved on a monthly basis for our customers that are trying to do some of this discovery themselves. And that's just on trying to figure out what we own. Layering on the risks is only going to help a little bit more. So I'll leave this slide up for now, and we can dig into questions. But again, this is how we see the pillars of ASM. So I'll let folks read through this at their own pace. But I think we can start to get to some questions.
I love that. Okay, awesome. Well, Kaz, honestly, just a fantastic presentation, a great demo. We got a couple of high fives coming in from the audience as well. So you have some fans out there, and a good demo really does give you an idea of what a tool can do for you. So I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time. All right, let's jump into some questions. You ready?
Yep.
Let's do it. Okay, I do want to start with this one. Now, your colleague Brian actually did answer this on the chat, but we kind of felt that maybe it was worth reiterating in case everyone was so enraptured with the presentation that they forgot to watch the Q&A. We were asked, does Censys automatically scan for your resources, or do you need to configure these IP services for Censys to track?
Great question. Yeah, that's a great question, and we get it a lot. Simply put, it is more or less automated the way that we are going to seek out your infrastructure, right? So the company Censys, we are scanning the entirety of the internet regardless of our customer base. So the data is already there. And really all you have to do as a customer is when you're onboarded, and this is fully automated, is we essentially say, hey, who are you? What's your email address? We can use your Crunchbase page and start to figure out how is your organization shaped. From everything from your top level company down to the acquisitions you've made, and maybe some nested acquisitions. Maybe you bought someone that bought someone, or maybe you've divested, right? All this information is usually very, very hard to come by. There mostly isn't folks that have been around for the entire company history to understand this. And we understand folks are struggling to have this list on their own. So in terms of, configuring this and getting set up, it's very simple, very automated, but we'll start at the OSINT layer. So figure out, what are names that could be registered to domains? What are names that could be registered to different IP spaces? And then we're off and running from there. That's when we start the attribution or the discovery process. And that all happens, again, automated on an automated basis. So very easy to get spun up, no agents. You usually don't even need to get IT involved. We see folks are ready to roll once they've gotten through the POV process, if they'd like, right? So it's really, really short time to value.
So for somebody who's saying, I don't know what I don't know, are you helping them out as well?
Yes, we definitely are. Yeah, we've been through some scenarios where, someone has just bought a company and they thought they understood what they just inherited. And then we showed them, actually, there's this other organization that is nested within there. So you should probably get your ass on that. So that does happen every step of the way, but this is exactly what a tool like Censys is built for.
Awesome. Okay. This one's a little bit longer, so I'm going to read this out. Is this for organizational users who also, or also for individuals at home? Due to remote work, boundaries are blurred and an individual should be able to see what is out there, both their business stuff and private stuff, either of which can be used to attack the other. It's a great question.
Yes, that is a phenomenal question. So this particular platform and what we showed, that is for organizational users. That being said, we do also have an additional kind of add-on to the platform. We call it Henry. That stands for Home Network Risk Identifier. We kind of cobbled it together during the start of the pandemic. But what that will do is it'll allow you to monitor things like maybe you have a VPN that all of your traffic is routing through from your remote workforce. We can start to monitor that and say, hey, is there any exposures that we're seeing? We won't pivot. We won't do some of the same things and discover more on that network, but we can help you keep your eyes on, hey, are your employees, are their home networks, are they safe, or are they accidentally exposing things in that way? So we can help on both sides of the fence. But what we saw today was mostly for organizational users.
I like that. Henry sounds like a helpful guy.
He is.
Bradford actually wanted to clarify, you said entirely agentless or that it's automated. He's wondering, are agents optional and maybe are they even required for some assets?
No, entirely agentless. Yes. The closest thing would be our cloud connectors, but that's simply just, a Docker container, or, we can use, there's a couple other different methodologies, but there are no agents at all, entirely agentless. So it's very quick to spin up.
Nice. Okay. Danny here is wondering, how hands-on or easy is it to remediate risks without having to delve into the underlying infrastructure?
Good question. Yeah. So, hopefully you got a little bit out of the demo, but it can be super easy, right? And so I also do want to make it clear, the remediation, we won't go so far as remediating on your behalf, but we can obviously show you what to do, help you get it all situated. So it can be very easy. It can be entirely automated. You can, the logbook is a great place where we can just trigger specific events to happen based on, risk severity or a specific risk type. So you don't need to necessarily dig into every asset to the level of detail that I did, but that is available as well.
Okay. This might apply to some of the folks in our audience. Jeffrey's wondering if it's HIPAA compliant.
The platform is, I guess, in itself, we are still on our path to HIPAA compliance. However, it's, I think we're in an interesting space right now where the majority, or I guess not the majority, all the data that we have is, public data, right? So that does get interesting from time to time with, security teams and risk teams on the customer side. But in terms of having HIPAA compliance, that is something we're still seeking out.
Awesome. So coming soon, Jeffrey, stay tuned. Bradford had another question for you. He's always full of great questions. He says, if assets are missed, is it discovered via IP address or machine name?
Phenomenal question. It can be discovered a lot of different ways. And so the one thing that's unfortunate about demo environments is it's hard to show, how things look in reality. But there's a portion on there where I was talking about the asset trail, and that will always show you how we got from point A to point B. And that can be through a multitude of different paths, right? We've seen things where maybe an entire CIDR range is a seed or an input or a starting point. And then from there, we've pivoted to domains, and then domains that are presenting certificates, and then certificates that are on hosts that are entirely out of that range. So we can find your assets a lot of different ways, but they'll always be captured in that trail. So it could be IP address, it could be domain name, it could be a common name on a certificate. It's really just kind of up to how we're able to find it.
Okay, how do you address false positives?
False positives, yeah, we get that a lot. And I think, unfortunately, the ASM space has a little bit of a bad rap right now for false positives and stale data. But we address it kind of on 3 different tiers. One is simply the data that fuels it, right? I talked about it quite a bit, but the data that we have, we're collecting it ourselves. It's as fresh as possible. So that does a lot for us being able to attribute, intelligently, smartly, and conservatively, in the sense that we don't feel we have to do some kind of low confidence level pivots to pull in things that could be yours, right? We have a good starting point from that data. And then I talk about the onboarding process. That's all can be managed by the customer, and everything in our platform is completely manageable by the customer. You do not necessarily even have to engage with Censys on a daily basis. So I guess the first kind of foundational levels, we can start to knock false positives out of the way. If they do pop up, which sometimes they do, it's very easy to remove assets. I didn't show that functionality, but it's very easy to pull things out of the platform. And with that, let's say we find a domain by accident and it pulls in a bunch of other infrastructure. All you have to do is remove that one domain, and it will cut out the rest of the trail, nip it in the bud, so to speak. And so the rest of your attack surface will immediately be cleaned up as well. So it's very easy to manage if it does happen, but we go through kind of a lot of steps from the foundation up to drive down false positives.
Awesome. Okay. I've got another one from Bradford. At this point, I feel like I'm just going to put Bradford on the webinar on YouTube. Keep it coming, bud. You got this. Centrally managed. Can distributed administrators be onboarded from an enterprise license to manage instances for their own environments within the enterprise, viewed from the Uber administrator for an enterprise or a subdomain view?
Yes, great question. Yes. So we do have the ability to create what we call workspaces. It's just sub-accounts. And so the way that those are leveraged is we'll see kind of a master account where maybe, a giant company has a lot of different subsidiaries, but they want everything in one view. And then each workspace gets more and more granular or is focused to, one specific part of the business. You can absolutely do that. And then you can say, user XYZ, you have access to this sub account. Users A, B, and C, you can look at this sub account. And then maybe, the admin is able to view all of the data in all the accounts. So yes, that is something you can absolutely do.
I like the Uber administrator. Okay. Manish is wondering if ASM can also detect IoT or Internet of Things assets.
Yes. So I think it's also really important. Again, everything we do, all of our visibility is from the outside in, right? It's all anything that's on the internet or externally visible, we can find. So if your IoT assets are on the internet, we will find them. If they're not, then that's not something that Censys will find. But if they are, and oftentimes those can be problematic if you start to think about security, I guess, tooling on, for entrances and HVAC systems. If those are on the internet, those are probably a concern, but yes, we will be able to find them.
Okay, here's a fun one. If a 0-day comes out, are the risks getting updated?
Absolutely, yes. And so this is actually my favorite thing about Censys is I talked about the risk framework and kind of how we want to give that attacker's perspective. What's behind that is we have a team, the rapid response team. They're solely dedicated to doing research when 0 days drop, putting out blogs, letting the larger security community understand how the internet is reacting and shaped. But they will also work to get risks put back into the platform. So a great example, Log4j. I know we're all very aware of what that was. 3 days after that was announced, we had 27 different unique risk types because there was obviously a lot of ways that Log4j could pop up in your environment, but 27 different unique risk types put in the platform. And then after that, our customer success team does a really good job of reaching out to folks and saying, hey, we see these things. Do you want us to help out? Or we can just simply pass along the information. So yeah, the risk framework will absolutely change. And that's really the point of it, right? Is risks are not stale. What's important today may not be something that's heavily exploited in the future. So we want the framework to reflect that.
Yeah, that's so important. There's no standing still in security these days. Hey?
Exactly.
Well, honestly, Cos, I wish we could keep going with this. We are getting pretty close to the top of the hour, so I'm going to start to wrap us up. I'm curious if everyone in the audience sort of walked away with one key thing today, what would you want that to be? What's the aha takeaway that you want them to have?
I think the aha takeaway is, visibility. Your security practices should start with visibility and having a very sound understanding of everything that you own and everything that you're responsible for. Because that will just make everything easier when you talk about where do I go first, what is a priority, what is not. So having that visibility is of uber importance, especially now since attack surfaces are growing exponentially, it seems.
Love that. Okay. And for everyone out there who is totally in love with Censys now and ready to jump in or definitely to learn more, how do they get started? What's their first step?
Yep. So feel free to reach out. We are more than happy to talk. If you just have general questions, you can contact us. I think these are clickable, so go ahead and try them out. Or if you are ready to kind of take a couple more steps and you want to see your own attack surface, request a demo. We are more than happy to get those conversations going. We can build out your attack surface with you, show you what we found, and then see where it goes from there.
It's awesome. And there's some great handouts in the handouts tab there. So if you haven't already downloaded, go download them right now. And for anyone that asked a question that we did not get to, don't worry. The Censys team is going to be following up. So you'll hear from Cos, from Brian, from the crew, and they'll be in touch with you to make sure that we get answers to everybody. Cos, thank you again so much. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, and don't run away just yet, guys, because before we head out for the day, we have one more extra bit of excitement to add to an already extremely exciting webinar. It is time for a prize giveaway. Now, I'm going to remind you one more time that you must be present in the live webinar today to win. Today's winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Shin Wu of California. Shin Wu of California. Congratulations to Shin. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar today. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Censys for making this webinar possible. A giant thank you to Cos for sharing some super exciting innovations with us today. That demo was amazing. And hey, I'm sending some high fives and special thank yous to all of you here with us today for attending, for asking some amazing questions. Honestly, these webinars are so wonderful to be a part of because they give us the opportunity to connect and to explore some of these innovative new ideas together. I know I've learned a ton from this discussion. I hope you have as well. I can't wait to see you all at a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day.